I had lost some of that bite.
They see this fire in my pen and think I'm dodging smoke. I would've lost the Bada dog, I would've lost the pro. Huh?
I would've lost the Bada dog, I would've lost the pro.
Embarrassing.
Ladies and gentlegrams, the soft-spoken chosen one who chose a gun and choked and run when poking fun at the powerful palm tree Cali penman. He's hit as the henchman for the defendant of defamation. Before Labry could go from crook to cases or even put his foot to pavement, Jason Cole was the one stepping on Kendrick's proclamation or eradication of the Big Three. But it was a bit brief because after a big speech as if he said Bill please, J. Cole up and left with one regret that he ever tested the vet and stepped into the mess. But that was today. Today, the two-stage huggers and kissers will be fighting as lawsuit dismissers since they were caught in the innards of courtroom clippers. If you don't understand me, stay tuned for the ride where we break this mess down. But first, like and subscribe.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.
Now, ladies and gentlegrams, the softest and the nicest people in hip-hop just got sued on the same day. La Brianna and none other than J. Cole. J. Cole has always been the quiet one, the humble one. He was the middle ground between Drake's fame and Kendrick's fury. But somewhere along the way, that calm has turned into silence. Silence that has actually landed him to get sued.
I study for a living.
And not just by anyone, but a Harlem icon in Cameron, who's suing J. Cole for ghosting him after using him for a feature for his last project. The very last project he dissed Kendrick Lamar on. But while that project might have shown us that Cole ultimately feels most at peace when he hides from rap beef, at this point in time it seems like he might be hiding from accountability. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean for Cameron to go through the lengths of actually filing a lawsuit against J. Cole, he is most literally hiding from accountability.
Me.
Cold world killer.
You feel me?
Know what it is, man.
That time.
Almost time.
We'll touch on that later in this video, but I'm talking about in the figurative sense. See, J. Cole is one of my favorite artists from the 2010s era, and one who I feel like absolutely lived up to their fullest potential in terms of what a great MC, what a great artist in general can accomplish. He's teased retirement and suffered writer's block multiple times, but never let that detract him from continuing to evolve and still remain competitive and consistent. He never pulled a Frank Ocean and disappeared for 5+ years in between projects after giving us classic albums. He never pulled an Andre 3000 and let the writer's block get the best of him and picked up a flute instead. He never pulled a Drake and let the vanity of a lifestyle within Hollywood consume him to the point where all he could rap about was 21-year-olds and manufactured mob boss Fruity Phony Montana fan fiction.
It wasn't that I wasn't cool, it was that the kids that were cool, I wasn't on their wavelength, which made me sort of uncool, I guess.
You know what I did, man? Fuck all y'all, man. For real, man. I see y'all boys outside when I see y'all, man. For real, man.
He didn't go the Kanye West route of prioritizing crazy tweets over crazy tracks. He also didn't go the Wale or Kid Cudi route where he basically forgot how to make a hit. No disrespect to either of them, especially Wale. He's still giving us great music, but J. Cole is obviously operating at a higher level. And he's been doing so for nearly 2 decades at this point. He's reinvented himself, he's given us massive moments, he's given us massive feature runs, a great collective or record label in Dreamville. On paper, this is an A+ perfect career, perfect legacy. Plus, he seems like the nicest, most humble, grounded dude, right? So what exactly is wrong? Well, I think this Cameron lawsuit reflects a bigger problem within J. Cole's career, and this word is very ugly, but I can't really think of a better one to describe it. It's a word salad, honestly. He's got this conflicted imposter syndrome that's reflected through this self-sabotaging modesty. And when I said earlier in this video he hides from accountability, I think it's only because he hides from the standards that he sets on himself. Because again, from the outside looking in, this is an A+ perfect legacy, and any stain upon it only derives from J. Cole's own insecurities.
I hate J. Cole the way that Kendrick hates Drake. Always have, always will. My biggest complaint about Jermaine since the beginning of his career is that he's a big ass poser. Him trying to pose like he didn't take no L in this rap beef. But here's the thing, Jermaine. Ain't no incompletes in rap beefs. So when you pulled that track, you took a L. Don't come back months later talking about firing my pen. They think I'm dodging smoke when you brought an actual water gun to one of the biggest rap battles we've seen since Drake versus Pusha T. You trying to make it seem like it was an internet moment to save face. Because what it was really about was competition. And you can't be king because you don't want to compete. You just want the crown to be handed to you on some privilege type shit. Because that's what you used to. Privilege.
Now, shout out to this creator, V Bars on TikTok. I'm going to leave a link in the description of this video to her TikTok page. And we'll dissect her perspective a little bit more as we get to J. Cole's response to the battle later on in this video. But J. Cole's reaction to that battle was very consistent with a lot of the pitfalls of his career. And it's directly the reason why Cameron is suing him today. There's a lot to unpack in this video. But first, lobbers and gentlegrams, we gotta take it all the way back. I think the root of any insecurity that J. Cole has had throughout his career derives from the very moment he signed to Roc Nation. J. Cole wasn't born anywhere flashy, but he also didn't have an incredibly rough upbringing. He grew up in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He was on the straight and narrow, headed down a college path, and in 2007, by the time he's around 21, 22, he's taking music very seriously. So much so to the point that he actually brought a beat CD. Because again, Cole doesn't just write, he also produces. He brought that CD to Rock the Mic Studios, the studio that was used by Jay-Z, and he waited hours hoping he could hand his tape to Jay. Eventually, Jay-Z came out, kind of dismissed him, but the two rekindled about 2 years later after J. Cole released the song Lights Please. J. Cole's manager at the time, Mark Pitts, said, "It might have been in November 2008 when I first heard Lights Please. I called Jay-Z and I said, I've got a Christmas present for you. I went to Jay's house and said, I'm going to play you one thing, and I played him Lights Please. I remember his face when he heard the song. He had the same expression I had from hearing it. He wanted to meet Cole. We had the meeting in the office and it was on. I played Jay Lights Please, Lost Ones, Grown Simba, and a bunch of freestyles, and from there, he was in."
The first song he heard, he was just like, yo, who is this kid? Can you bring him to me?
From Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Yeah, exactly. You know, once I got the news, I really didn't believe it. You know, people like, yo, somebody called me, they're like, yo, Jay wants to sit down with you. And it's kind of like, you know, half excitement, half like, yeah, right. You know, like whatever. I believe it when I see it.
So boom, it's 2009. J. Cole is the first MC signed to Jay-Z's Roc Nation label. A lot of pressure already, but the pressure was even bigger than that. See, 2009 is the emergence of the blog era. Aside from pioneers like a Lupe Fiasco or a Soulja Boy to some extent, you had this brand new group of rappers who were just like J. Cole in that they grew up detached from the gang life, detached from drug dealing, and instead brought more melody, brought more everyday average Joe type stories to their music. Think of a Kid Cudi, Drake, Wale, J. Cole. They're all rapping about heartbreak, hustling, navigating the early stages of fame, everyday life, etc. And J. Cole is fighting for his positioning, his footing within the blog era. He was poised to be the leader of the new school around this time.
We really believe Jay was like a drug kingpin, you know, still spending money from 88, whether or not it was true or not. Like, who cares? The music was incredible. Biggie was really like this overweight player, smooth guy, like, because that's what he rapped about. And Pac was really this maniac, psych. Like, this is what we thought these guys really were, whether or not they were or not. I feel like the new lyrical guys these days have to stick more to themselves. Like, Wale really has to be like the fashion guy who grew up African, and I really have to be the guy who moved to, like, you have to tell your story now, because if you don't, and if you're slightly off, it's going to come back and haunt you, because the internet, you can't be rapping like you're a drug kingpin, and I could just pull up your W-Dons from whatever regular job you had. So I think it changed in that way.
Remember, this is 2009, 2010. Kendrick Lamar is way in the underground. Frat rap is ruling the airwaves. Kid Cudi is first up to bat with his massive hit song Day and Night, his collaborations with Kanye West. Drake is next up, makes an even bigger splash than Kid Cudi, right next to Lil Wayne. Global hits being printed out of the OVO sweatshop on a daily like best I ever had and successful. Wale is next up, and he catches a massive hit early on with his Lady Gaga collaboration, Chillin'. He's good friends with J. Cole, and J. Cole witnesses how Wale was kind of pressured by his label to follow up the momentum of that big single with a debut album. Maybe a bit of a rushed one because it didn't hit the commercial success that he thought it would. And this might have scared J. Cole. It might have scared Jay-Z. It might have scared the labels, right? How do we market this internet superstar to actually translate their virality into real physical sales and radio play? So Jay-Z told Jermaine, you're not releasing your debut album until the label has a hit from you, buddy.
Be on the lookout for the single coming real soon, to be announced. Album coming real soon, title to be announced. If you don't have the warm-up, get that. And look out for a lot of features that I've been doing. And also on the production level, watch out for J. Cole as a producer.
And this had J. Cole, I don't want to say shook, but it definitely kind of ruffled the feathers within his head. Because he didn't really know how to navigate making a bona fide hit. He was looking at Drake, constantly getting compared to him, but Drake is already out of here with the hits. But unlike Roc Nation, J. Cole wanted to choose a different path. He wanted to have a unified, undeniable, unilateral classic with his debut album. He wanted a Reasonable Doubt, an Illmatic, a College Dropout.
Probably the most perfect example I can think of is Kanye, because he came out, College Dropout was an undeniable classic, and I always use him as an example because that album is 100% him. You know, he didn't have to change to sell millions. It was just him. He made great music. He came out with Jesus Walks as a single. Like, people were playing Jesus Walks in the club, All Falls Down. So that's what I mean by keeping it true to yourself, but you can still sell records.
But the album kept getting pushed back. So in response, J. Cole is trying to build up hype on the internet where it all started by dropping all his best work on his now classic mixtape Friday Night Lights, released around 2010 because, again, his album just kept getting delayed. And he needed to compete with all these guys who are now running the game. Now you got Big Sean, who just stepped in the ring. You got Wiz Khalifa, who just shook the game up with his Billboard #1 hit, Black and Yellow. Even Drake didn't have one of those at the time. So Jay-Z does what any smart executive would and pairs J. Cole up in the studio with the same producers of the song Black and Yellow. J. Cole reflected on this, saying that this was like the lowest he felt in his entire career, right? He doesn't have the buzz, or at least the label's telling him he doesn't have enough buzz to put out his debut album. So as a result, he's kind of getting desperate to get that hit into their hands so he can finally get his career up and running. He says the music that came out of that studio session with the Black and Yellow producers was horrible. It was generic radio club garbage that didn't really fit who J. Cole truly was.
Since I signed and got the deal, the only thing that's changed is I've become more conscious of being commercially successful without trying, without crossing the line of selling out or whatever the case is. So still keeping the music pure and keeping it lyrical and content worthy, have as much as artistic integrity as possible, but still being aware of what could sell and what's going to reach the largest amount of people.
So right off the rip, right, he's starting his career off in a little bit of a compromised, insecure position, watching his entire competition almost lap him at this point. And I'm not downplaying J. Cole when I say that, because he ends up redeeming himself. But first, things come to a boiling point when him, Drake, and Jay-Z are at a Grammy party or some sort of celebrity party, and Jay-Z approaches both J. Cole and Drake and looks at Drake and says, "Yo, please give my boy a hit." And imagine how horrible that must have sounded for J. Cole when his mentor, his boss, is looking at his greatest competition right now in Drake and begging the guy to give his artist a hit.
Embarrassing.
It made J. Cole feel like he wasn't truly built for this, like he couldn't stand toe-to-toe, even with the very artists he came in the game with. But that's when J. Cole blocked out all the outside noise, and he literally describes this in his Inevitable show. The reason why he came up with his first hit, Workout, is because he left those paid studio sessions, he left all those pop producers, he stopped worrying about the pressures that the label was putting on him, and just started creating out of a place of passion. He put on one of his favorite albums, The College Dropout, and when he heard the sample to the new workout plan, sparks started flying. He flipped the sample, created Workout, and the rest is history.
Whoop de scoop de poop. Whoop de do.
Well, not exactly, because Jay-Z actually did not like that record. Cole says it to this day, but it worked. So now he gets a release date for his debut album, but the problem is he puts all his best stuff on his mixtapes that came out before the album to build hype for the album, right? So when they're building this new track list for this album and they have deadlines to meet, the album didn't feel up to par with where Cole wanted it to be. Again, he wanted it to be an undisputed classic right off the rip. The label's telling him he could expect to sell around 60 to 70,000 copies in the first week. And keep in mind, Drake is already gearing up to drop his second album, and on his first at this point, he had already sold 400,000 copies in the first week with it. Wiz Khalifa did 100K, Big Sean did around 80. Kid Cudi was pulling in 90 to 100, so for Cole to do 60 to 70, that would put him in a tier a little bit below his peers. Now, I bring all this up to say that J. Cole from the beginning suffered this weird, I don't know if the word is dichotomy, duality or whatever, between being the underdog, but also being praised as the golden child, the guy who's going to carry the culture forward. He's standing right next to Jay. Out of the entire blog era, you could argue that he was the most lyrically skilled MC at this point in time who's in the mainstream. But at the same time, he doesn't have the hits. His debut album doesn't have the impact, doesn't have the quality of some of his peers, or at least the standard that Cole wanted it to be at.
Probably the most perfect example I think of is Kanye, because he came out, College Dropout was an undeniable classic, and I always use him as an example because that album is 100% him.
And again, the weird duality thing is that it ended up crushing expectations, selling over 200,000 copies in the first week, which is amazing for a debut project, but the critics didn't love it. And this would be a repeated theme throughout Cole's career, which he admit had got to him at the beginning, where his peers would get critical praise, but he would keep getting these 6 out of 10s from Pitchfork and all these major publications. But his fans loved the projects. The albums were selling well, right? So again, there's this weird balance between him not fully feeling like he's at where he belongs. And we see that on his next project when he releases the song Let Nas Down, an entire track on his sophomore album dedicated to the fact that he believed Nas was disappointed in J. Cole's first big single, Workout. So much so to the point where Nas had to hop on the remix and give J. Cole a pep talk to let him know, nah, you didn't let me down, you're doing great, keep going. Around this same time, J. Cole ends up on the XXL freshman class. He was actually late to the cover shoot, and a young Kendrick Lamar, who had yet to put out his debut project Section 80, was waiting around the studio, and I believe he actually asked Cole or asked one of the editors, like, hey, if J. Cole doesn't show up, can I just take his place on the cover instead? And this would be ironic because about a year later, if J. Cole thought, the competition was really kicking his butt at this point in time, he did not know what he was in for because, remember again, he wanted that unanimous classic with his debut. That's exactly what Kendrick had with Good Kid, Mad City. Cultural anthems, critical praise, high sales, immaculate concept. There was no compromising. There was no apologizing to Nas for the quality of the project. And J. Cole reminisces on the fact that him and Kendrick were like brothers at the time. He says that Kendrick was the only one in the game who shared the same type of love, respect, knowledge on the art form as Cole did. And Cole was actually the one who told Dr. Dre to sign Kendrick Lamar to Aftermath.
Did you tell Dr. Dre about Kendrick?
Who told you that? He just asked the craziest question, which, yes, the answer is yes, I did. I'm not going to say I was the first to tell him. When I brought him up to Dre, yo, you got to sign this kid from Compton, boom, boom, Kendrick, boom, boom. Shout out to Dr. Dre. He made the right decision.
Cole also produced the classic Kendrick Lamar track High Power off of Section 80. So their history dates way back, but at this point in time, Kendrick very quickly went from being the little brother to lapping Cole with just one album. Now he's doing bigger tours, bigger singles, bigger impact, bigger praise. From the public's perception, Kendrick has the bigger potential. And it left Cole feeling away. I can't play you guys clips from his Inevitable podcast, but you can listen to it yourself. Now remember how I said a repeated theme throughout Cole's career is he's hiding from accountability. He wants the praise, he wants the unanimous love, he feels insecure about not having it, but he's still worried about the hits. He's not going back to the roots of what made his classic projects like Friday Night Lights and The Warm-Up as great as they were, right? So what did he do? He blocked out the outside noise. He shut off social media. He stopped the partying. He exited the Hollywood life. He meditated, took long walks, and concocted Forest Hills Drive, what's pretty much considered his classic project, right? And from around 2014 to 2019, J. Cole, in my eyes at least, kind of became like the moral compass of mainstream rap. Again, he was like the calm between Kendrick's fury and Drake's fame. You'd get songs like Love Yours where he would preach self-worth over status. His albums like Forest Hills, For Your Eyes Only, KOD, they felt like therapy sessions. His headspace seemed balanced. He wasn't lost in the lifestyle of your typical Hollywood star, and while he would teeter the line of discussing very serious social issues and topics, songs like Be Free where he mourned police brutality, or full projects like KOD where he warned the next generation of substance abuse, infidelity, etc. He didn't go the full, Kanye rebellious radical route, right? He always felt very grounded. There was no arrogance, no chaos. He rode his bike, he avoided jewelry. He seemed like a nice dude who could rap really well. But that would change in around 2018. Cole started thinking bigger. He wanted bigger things. He says it on his diss track to Kendrick Lamar, 7-Minute Drill, when he's discussing the 2017 album Kendrick released, Damn, saying, your third one was massive. That was your prime. I was trailing right behind, and now I just hit mine. This is all the way in 2024, right? But between 2019 and 2024, Cole was talking like he was God-level MC. In 2022, he rapped "The Best Rapper Alive" headshot. Now go and ask the best rapper who died. They tell you he never lied. But then on other songs, like his Pipe Down freestyle, he rapped "They threw the bronze to me," behind Drake and K-Dot. Yeah, those guys are superstars to me. But then on First Person Shooter with Drake, he's rapping, "We're the big three like we started a league, but right now I'm feeling like Muhammad Ali. I'm feeling like the one." And conveniently, that's when Kendrick had been quiet for a long period of time, right? Now, I love J. Cole, right? I love the feature run he went on from 2019 to around 2023. I love the Dreamville tapes, those sessions he was orchestrating. He was really making a strong case for being the best rapper alive at the time. But what did I say before? I believe he hides from accountability. If you're going to be the best rapper alive, not only do you have to, not be scared of competition, but you can't be flip-flopping with your takes, right? Again, on one freestyle, he's talking about how they threw the bronze at him, and he's okay with that as long as he knows he tries his hardest. But on the next record, he's talking about putting your favorite rapper's neck in a noose. Look at the best rapper alive from every era and tell me, did they ever not display that undisputed confidence that they are, no matter what, the best rapper alive if they really were in their prime? Look at a Lil Wayne in his prime. Look at 50 Cent, Kanye West, even Drake, who I don't think can hold a candle lyrically to Cole, was always confident in his skill set, always confident in his path. J. Cole seemed to flip-flop. 1 minute, he's locked in his zone, he's meditating, he gives us projects that are really grounded, no forced hits, really cohesive like a Forest Hills Drive. The next minute, he's talking crazy like he's the best rapper alive. And then he gets a little too ahead of himself, and we know what happens next, right? But another issue I thought that was really interesting that kind of mirrors, the lack of accountability that sometimes Cole maybe has in terms of the message that he leads with is his situation with No Name. No Name's a really strong MC who in 2020 during the George Floyd protests, she had tweeted out saying, "Poor black folks all over the country are putting their bodies on the line in protest for our collective safety, and y'all favorite top-selling rappers not even willing to put a tweet up." And Cole felt like she was talking about him. And I think the discourse is a good thing, but I think if you feel targeted by the people who are saying you're choosing to be willfully ignorant in these situations, either take the time to educate yourself or stay on the sidelines like Drake, right? And don't get into the politics, the issues that might plague your people. I'm not saying that's right, but pick a side, right? If you feel like her words were aimed at you, do something about it. Either do the work to educate yourself so you could speak up on these issues, so your voice, which is very powerful, can bring something positive to the discourse, or just don't respond to her frustration at all and continue staying silent. Well, instead, J. Cole dropped a song called "Snow on the Bluff," where he opens up the track by saying that fans overestimate his intelligence and his activism, that he's not as quote-unquote woke as people assume. He admits that others, like activists like No Name, are more educated and outspoken about systemic racism, capitalism, and police violence. And he admits that he feels behind and unsure how to act in these very politically charged times. Which is fine and all, but then Cole ends up, recognizing No Name's passion about the situation, but somehow feels criticized and targeted by her tone. He raps, she's mad at the injustices and ignorances, but because she's calling out, these high-status celebrities who are staying silent on the issue, he feels that her delivery kind of alienates the very people she's trying to help. He raps bars like, "Just cause you woke and I'm not, that ain't no reason to talk like you're better than me." Huh? Does he have a point in that she's being condescending, or is this another instance of J. Cole hiding from accountability? J. Cole argues that change takes time. He raps, "Freedom like trees, they can't grow a forest overnight," and that teaching should be patient, not condescending. He also claims he feels guilt that he's benefited from success while there's other people out there that are suffering. And despite being called a hero, he questions if he's done enough for his people. He's wrestling with whether or not his fame has distanced himself from the struggle. And ultimately, he ends the song off with more self-doubt, saying that when someone praises him, he doesn't feel worthy of it, questioning his image as a conscious rapper, wondering if he's been performing empathy rather than actually living it. But this entire song felt a lot more reactive than proactive, right? I mean, there's civil unrest going on outside, and he's making the situation about himself, and he doesn't feel like he's lived up to the title that the people have given him, and that he's become so sheltered due to his privilege that he now feels this guilt when there's this moment of racial awakening. And as a result, he doesn't know how to respond, so instead he gets defensive when these activists call on him to be the leader that the world has kind of looked at him to be. And as a white Canadian, I'm in no place to be telling someone, especially an African American, how they should have been feeling throughout moments in history like this. But As a very much outsider looking in, it just felt like J. Cole was kind of placing his insecurities onto this woman who was simply trying to fight for her people to step up, to be more educated, to take advantage of the platforms they have to push the right message, right? And No Name responded with her own song where she said, "But people in the back quiet as a church mouse, basement studio when duty calls to get the verse out. I guess the ego's hurt now. It's time to go to work. Wow, look at him go. He's really about to write about me when the world is in smokes, when it's people in trees, when George was begging for his mother saying he couldn't breathe. You thought to write about me? Little did I know all my reading would be a bother. It's trans women being unalived, and this is all he can offer? And this is all y'all receive?" Distracting from the convo with organizers. Ultimately, No Name expresses her frustration that during this period of trauma, J. Cole and the patriarchy as a whole, as she puts it, are centering around their ego. Cole is here using his platform for self-analysis instead of collective action. Even Chance the Rapper came to No Name's defense, getting on Twitter saying, "They're both my people, but only one of them put out a whole song talking about how the other one needs to reconsider their tone and attitude in order to save the world. It's not constructive and undermines all the work No Name has done. It's not black women's job to spoon feed us. We're grown." And while I don't think Cole is wrong, in fact, I think it's a virtue to, have that modesty, have that humility to be like, you know what, maybe I'm not educated enough. Maybe I'm not using my voice in the proper way, but it didn't seem like he was taking, again, the reactive step towards doing so. Instead, he was, again, hiding from that accountability of educating himself, of speaking up during these times of trauma, and instead redirected the conversation onto how basically his feelings were hurt by No Name's tone. Now, fast forward a couple years, and obviously we know Cole is still going on this monstrous feature run, proclaiming himself the best rapper alive, still putting out great art, but is there true confidence in the messaging, right? Well, that would truly be tested when Kendrick Lamar dropped Like That, the response to first-person shooter, which J. Cole, if you really think about it, kind of kicked off this whole little spat amongst the big three, right? So it was only right that he stepped in, that he finally took accountability for his words where he said, "I feel like Muhammad Ali," and he stepped up to the plate and told Kendrick, "You hit your prime in 2017. I was trailing right behind. I just now hit mine," right? But it didn't take not even 1 week for J. Cole to quickly backtrack, remove the diss track off of streaming platforms. Of course, not after he got his first full week of tracking in for his album that he dropped, which had Cameron on it. That's going to play an important role very shortly. But ultimately removed the diss track, removed himself from the beef, proclaimed Kendrick to be this immensely talented guy, pretty much left Drake hanging high and dry, but still said all these things about Kendrick's legacy, his career, who he is as a person, right? So how do you kind of walk those things back? And now that you're trying to, where are you leaving your standing with Drake after you were just hugging and kissing on stage with him 2 months before this?
Trying to find a little angle and downplay his greatness. I want to say right now tonight, how many people think Kendrick Lamar is one of the greatest to ever touch microphone? Dreamville, y'all love Kendrick Lamar, correct? As do I. So I just want to come up here and be like, that was the lamest, goofiest shit. And it made me feel like 10 years ago when I was moving incorrectly.
I never thought Cole was necessarily wrong for apologizing. I mean, it kind of took him out of the conversation for, who's the best MC at this point in time. But if that's what he felt like he needed for peace of mind, I was with it. But then he drops Port Antonio, his first song in reflection in response to the entire situation after Kendrick Lamar and Drake traded some horribly harsh words over the summer. J. Cole comes back in the fall to reflect on his positioning within the game after this beef and where he stands with mainly just Drake, not really Kendrick. Now, there's several parallels between his situation with No Name, his lack of accountability there, and his response to her with Snow on the Bluff, and his lack of accountability within this beef and his response on Port Antonio. Number one, in both these situations, J. Cole acknowledges the problem, but he deflects from a deeper responsibility. On Snow on the Bluff, he acknowledges that he hasn't spoken up enough for his people and he questions his authenticity. But again, much of the song focuses on how No Name's tone affects him or how he feels, rather than what he will do. And then with Port Antonio, he acknowledges the escalation of a feud that he was involved in, obviously with 7 Minute Drill, but he frames his withdrawal from the beef in terms of what the business/industry wanted, as if he didn't want that crown as badly as they did. He framed it as if it was, the industry wanting blood, they wanted clicks, and so he gave into it, rather than fully unpacking his own choice to enter into the beef or what he actually contributed to it. The second parallel in his behavior in both these situations is the centering of self and the internal conflict. Both of these songs, they place J. Cole's internal struggle at the forefront. The emotional guilt, the introspection, the identity crisis that he's kind of going through. And in Port Antonio, he doesn't necessarily focus on reconciling the harm that had been done between both parties, all the dirt that Drake and Kendrick threw on each other, and J. Cole's involvement in it, but instead he focuses on his own stakes if he had continued to participate in the battle, rapping bars like, "I wouldn't have lost a battle, I would have lost a bro." Again, it's very reactive, but not proactive. You're not offering any valid solution here. In both these instances, J. Cole doesn't fully step into a role of a leader or a person fighting for change. Instead, he takes a step back. In the No Name situation, he suggests that the activist should talk to people more calmly instead of saying, I'll do XYZ to change. And in the Kendrick and Drake beef, although it's a very different war they're fighting, he frames it as if he's avoiding the war rather than actively acknowledging that he was complicit in fueling it for all of these years, fueling the competition, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? He wanted to be the best MC. Now he's acting like this battle was a horrible thing that shouldn't have happened to begin with, but again doesn't offer a solution on how to reconcile the damages. On both songs, he proclaims that while he still wants to protect his legacy, there's got to be a boundary that's set in terms of what people can expect from him. On Snow on the Bluff, he's talking about how the expectation that his college degree or fame means that he has to be deep, but this criticism ends up kind of subtly demoralizing No Name instead of accepting fault for not doing enough. Meanwhile, with the Kendrick and Drake war, he's setting the boundary or the expectation that he cannot be a king if it means he has to, dig up dirt to sway the whole thing, framing it like it's not a competition that he didn't want in the first place. And most importantly, on both these tracks, Cole criticizes external forces rather than, again, taking accountability. On Snow on the Bluff, he's critiquing No Name's tone and her approach, rapping bars like, "How are you going to lead when you're attacking the very same guys?" And on Port Antonio, he's criticizing the industry and the lengths to which Kendrick and Drake took the beef in order to be crowned king. There's no introspection on, what action he can take to actually create the change that he wants to see, whether it's within the industry, whether it's amongst his people, whether it's how he wants to use his voice, whether it's how he wants to compete with his peers. In both cases, Cole refused to fully speak up. He withdrew himself. In the Kendrick and Drake beef, he didn't fully engage or take a side or clean house. He just walked away with all their blood on him, as he puts it. And ultimately, in both these situations, when issues become charged, Cole retreats. Again, I want to bring it back to a clip from the creator V Bars on TikTok. Again, link in the description for her channel. I think she summarizes the reaction to Port Antonio perfectly, and J. Cole's whole reaction to the entire beef.
I hate J. Cole the way that Kendrick hates Drake. Always have, always will. My biggest complaint about Jermaine since the beginning of his career is that he's a big-ass poser. Him trying to pose like he didn't take no L in this rap beef. But here's the thing, Jermaine. Ain't no incompletes in rap beefs. So when you pulled that track, you took a L. Don't come back months later talking about fire in my pen. They think I'm dodging smoke when you brought an actual water gun to one of the biggest rap battles we've seen since Drake versus Pusha T. You trying to make it seem like it was an internet moment to save face. Because what it was really about was competition. And you can't be king because you don't want to compete. You just want the crown to be handed to you on some privilege type shit. Because that's what you used to. Privilege. Just like in the first half of that song, he rapping about how his mama got married and moved him out the hood. And then going back to the hood made him feel weird. We supposed to feel sorry for your ass? My thing with Jermaine is he ain't never actually saying shit. He's just good at rhyming. And that's how he gets over on y'all. Is that he's really good at putting a rhyme scheme together. Putting very intricate words together and making them rhyme. But he's never actually saying shit worth listening to. How you keep wanting to consider yourself top dog and you don't even want to participate in a dog fight? You don't want to get dirty. You don't want to get no blood on your hands. LeBron don't show up talking about, I don't want to bust my friend's ass today. A friendly fade still includes a fade. You talking about, I wouldn't have lost the battle. I would have lost the bro. And you would have gained the crown. Because if that's what you want, you got to go for your bro. Oh, well, y'all ain't making friends. Y'all making hip-hop history. You could be friends later. Talking about my friends went to war and I walked away with all their blood on me. How? When you ran away before the war even got started. Soldier Boy storytelling that motherfucker. Right. That's what I mean by that posing ass. He the motherfucker that's in the car on the way to do the drive-by, sweating bullets and asking to be let out. So you let his ass out. And then later on, he back at the spot telling the stories about how he was dumping him up. Like, shut up. Shut your ass up. Got me on here agreeing with Joe Budden. Pissing me off.
Now, this is all 27 minutes plus of very important context when we look at this brand new lawshell. Sorry, I can't speak. I meant to say bombshell of a lawsuit that Cameron just dropped onto J. Cole. Now, if you break it down, it's absolutely insane for one rapper to be suing another. And I want to emphasize very clearly, this is not a situation like Drake suing UMG over Kendrick's diss song. Cameron is suing because he was promised something he did not receive. And the reason he did not receive what he was promised is because, again, like we've been saying, J. Cole hides from accountability. But hold up, before we actually touch on this lawsuit, we gotta touch on this album that Cole has been teasing for years now. He has been teasing, I believe, since like let's check. 2018 is the first time he introduces the concept of the fall off. The outro to his album KOD, 1985. Intro to the fall off, where he, sends a stark warning to rappers like Lil Pump, who are kind of just in it for the money, in it for the mumbling, letting them know the lifestyle they lead can lead them down a bad path. That's a video for another day. But Cole says he actually thought of the title originally in 2016 when he started working on For Your Eyes Only. And he says the title captures the concept of a decline or a loss of edge. Now, he's officially been teasing this album since like 2020, so already 5 years now. We haven't heard a real Cole album unless you count Might Delete Later, but that was kind of like a mixtape. We haven't heard a real Cole project in 4 years, and it's ironic because he was criticizing Kendrick for barely dropping any music. But when describing what this title truly means, it feels like Cole was kind of conflicted in it, right? He reflected on how the source of the inspiration for this concept came after Forest Hills Drive, where he feels like he accomplished the highest heights of his career at that point in time. Remember, he was facing those big challenges from Drake and Kendrick Lamar to meet the same type of critical praise Kendrick was getting and the same type of commercial success that Drake had had. He finally accomplished that with Forest Hills Drive when he just, didn't let his insecurities get the best of him. He was meditating a lot, removed himself from social media, and really locked in on some conceptual storytelling vibes. But after that came the tour, the hits. It felt like Cole was on top of the world, and he says that's when he felt comfortable. And he realized at one point in time when trying to cook up his next project, like, wow, I really lost my edge. He was suffering writer's block. That lack of confidence was in full effect. And he's like, oh, this is what the fall off is. And he stepped back at that period of time and asked himself, like, you accomplished a lot. You can just live, drive off on the coast, have a happy life, forget about everything else. Your legacy is cemented. Do you want to do that? Or do you want to keep going? And ultimately, he chose to keep going.
This is 2015 after my biggest album. 2014 Forest Hills Drive. I got off tour. Bro, I was comfortable. I was comfy. I was watching TV shows for the first time, bro, since I was in my teens. Like, I had never done this because I had been going nonstop with a big goal. Every day I open my laptop up, try to make a beat, and then I try to write. And then when I start writing, I'll be like, man, this kind of ass, if I'm being honest with myself. And it was like, oh, you hella comfortable. I had lost some of that bite, and I had a real talk with myself. I was like, yo, bro, you accomplished a lot. It's like, yo, you made it to where you wanted to make it to. Do you even want to keep going? Do you want to retire right now? I thought, and I was like, what's the answer? And I felt the answer immediately, and it was like, nah, not yet. If I go out and close the chapter, not saying I will, but if I do, I want to do it at the highest level of achievement and skill set that I ever been in my life. So I was like, yo, that's going to take time. So since then, I was like, oh, there's an album for this, and I ain't know the name. And over time, the name and the story and my skills grew. It's a level I want to reach for myself.
But ultimately, he's very vague on whether or not the fall off as a concept, as an album, truly means that this is when he falls off, or this is when he gracefully exits, right? Like, it sounds like with this concept, he's almost trying to redefine what the fall off means, almost like a graceful exit instead of like kind of being forced out due to an apparent lack of quality or inspiration. But does that mean this is the final project? I mean, if it does, that's okay. But if the core of this concept is to show how during that pivotal moment in time, you had a conversation with yourself internally and realized you didn't want to stop, you didn't want to fall off, then why would you center this whole concept around the fact that this would be your last project and you're almost choosing to fall off? Maybe he's leaving out some key details here, some key questions that'll only be answered on the album, but I do feel like it's a very strange choice to name this highly anticipated album that you've been teasing for half a decade, The Fall Off. if this is not truly where you want to end things. And I don't know, between that and this beef, it seems like ever since First Person Shooter, J. Cole has left us with a lot more questions than answers in terms of where he wants his legacy to be, where he feels like he is amongst the big three, where he feels like his career should go next, and how confident his fans should be in him as an artist going forward. And this lawsuit with Cam'ron kind of emphasizes that. So TMZ had reported that Cam'ron had sued J. Cole over their song Ready 24. This was on the same album, Might Delete Later, that his Kendrick diss track 7 Minute Drill was on. Cam'ron claims that he wrote the lyrics and dropped the verse on the song in exchange for J. Cole agreeing to collaborate with him on a future project, or at least appear on Cam'ron's podcast, It Is What It Is. Cam'ron alleges that 2 years after they recorded the song, J. Cole neglected to do either one. He neglected to give Cam'ron a feature or hop on the podcast. Cam says that Ready 24 was recorded back in 2022, and from July 2023 until April 2024, that's an important date, Cam'ron says that he continued to communicate with J. Cole, who repeatedly stated that he was unavailable for the podcast. Cam'ron also says the subsequent music collaboration between them never materialized, despite Cam'ron putting effort into making it happen. And ultimately, Cam says he has not been properly compensated and wanted a judge to declare him co-author of the song Ready 24 and to order a full accounting of any money earned by the song so he can get his share, which he estimates is over $500,000. So basically what happened is J. Cole sampled the Cam'ron song and had him feature on this song, Ready 24, and J. Cole told Cam, like, hey, either I'll give you back a verse or I'll hop on your podcast, because Cam these days is more known for his podcast than rapping in 2025, right? And also, low-key, like a J. Cole appearance on the podcast is probably worth a lot more to Cam'ron than a J. Cole verse, because, yeah, they'd go bar for bar, it would be a great song, but would it hit the billboards? Would it do numbers the way a podcast would right now with all these unanswered questions from J. Cole? And notice how in the lawsuit, Cam'ron says he was keeping communication with J. Cole from the summer of 2023 until April 2024. That's when the Might Delete Later album dropped, with the song that featured Cam'ron and with the Kendrick diss track. Of course, J. Cole backtracked the Kendrick diss track, and aside from releasing his own pre-recorded podcast that was done in 2023, where he reflected on his entire beginning half of his career, from Cole World, A Sideline Story, all the way to Forest Hills Drive, J. Cole has not reflected on this beef just yet, right? And it would not make sense for him to go on a podcast if he didn't feel ready to discuss the matters. So I get it, but you told Cam'ron, who is a legend, a massive inspiration to you, that you would either get him back on a podcast appearance or on a feature. And don't forget, J. Cole has done several features ever since the beef ended, right? He did a song with Future, he did a song with Daylight, and most importantly, he did that abhorrent, I don't know if that's the right word, that atrocious feature on the song Grippy with Cash Cobain. It was like him and Drake decided to put out the worst music they ever had right when that beef ended, right? J. Cole put out Grippy, Drake put out Wagwan Delilah or whatever it was called. And it's just like, you had time to put that out, but you can't do this feature for Cam'ron. It's one thing to not want to go on a podcast yet if you don't feel ready to, roll out your next project, start your new era, discuss what happened last year, because you're going to have to discuss it eventually. But if you don't want to do that right now, that's one thing. But you've done plenty features already. You can easily get by with doing a verse, a little swap, and not discuss anything beef related on that verse. Just go bar for bar with him, have some fun, right? You're talking about this is the fall off, you're, sharpening your sword. You're obviously ready to dish out a feature. You were dishing out tons of them. Great ones from 2018 to 2023. It was this beef that essentially put a halt to everything that you were doing. But now you're failing to take accountability once again for a promise that you made. So much so to the point where Cam'ron has to go to the courts to get his payment for a song he did for you instead of just hitting you directly or getting a verse back from you. This doesn't seem like the J. Cole we know, right? Something seems off here. But we reviewed countless times throughout this video how not only does J. Cole necessarily avoid confrontation, avoid accountability in certain senses, but he also seems confused in different facets. He was confused on his legacy when he first came in the game and Jay-Z was begging him for a hit. He was confused on his place within the Big Three when he wanted that crown. He wanted to be considered the best rapper alive. He was confused on his own influence when challenged to speak up for his people. And he was confused on how to handle and navigate competition, competitive rivalry, when he's been discussing it in his raps for so many years now. And now it seems he's ultimately confused on how to reflect on the beef, right? Say what you want about La Brianna, say what you want about Kendrick, but both of them have done, to a very small degree, interviews ever since this beef has ended. Drake went on his little slumber party with Bobby Altov where he dissed his fragile ops, made allusions to weird things going on within the industry, and acted like that same delusional, confident teenage prom queen that he is in terms of, how nobody can touch him, he's still on top of the game, etc. As for Kendrick, he was asked directly what his intentions were throughout the beef. He was asked what Not Like Us means to him. He described the meaning of it. He described where his head was at when he recorded his verse on Like That really kickstarted the entire back and forth with him and Drake. J. Cole is the only one who has not said a word about this entire situation. J. Cole was the only one who reflected on this beef as if he was morally above anyone involved and avoided a bloodbath of mudslinging and industry politics and social media narratives when he was really the one who was striving for that competition to begin with. And now, when he can easily return the favor that he owes, the business favor of getting on Cameron's podcast and not being afraid to answer questions on why he felt confident in navigating the beef the way he did, on how he could still feel confident professing himself the king or the greatest when he took the course of action that he did. Where his confidence derives from today and how he will define his own legacy, his own fall off. He's so unconfident to answer these questions that he's avoiding returning the business favor that he owes to the point where the person on the other side is seeking legal action because J. Cole, once again, is hiding from accountability. But let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you in the next one.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.